Hello and welcome to NL's online guitar lesson series. Over the course of the next 6 weeks, we're going to learn lots of awesome stuff from the very beginning of the guitar. So you're going to learn how to hold the instrument, you're going to learn how to play the instrument, and you're going to learn, hopefully, how to think about the guitar moving forward. Before we get started playing the guitar, it's really important to get warmed up. We want to make sure that we have lots of blood moving through our shoulders, our arms, our hands, and our fingers especially. That will help to keep us nice and loose, it will help to make it easier to play, and it will help to prevent injury. So there's lots of movements we can do to make that happen, and here's a few of them now. We can start off just by shaking our arms. We can shake one arm at a time, or we can shake both arms. Feels a little bit silly just to do it on your own, but it doesn't really matter. Just to get your arms moving, to get blood moving through them. You can also roll your shoulders back and forward. A lot of people forget about the shoulders, but when we play guitar, our shoulders are moving into different positions, and you can get quite stiff if you're not nice and loosened off. The next thing to do would be to shake our wrists. Again, just to get the blood flowing through them, get used to moving through different ranges of motion in our wrists, and we can roll them around in circles as well, just to stretch off all the tendons and ligaments and muscles that control our hand. And we can also do the same thing with our fingers. We can wiggle our fingers to get them nice and warmed up, and we can stretch them in and out like this, just to make sure that we're nice and warm. We can even stretch our hands out like this, or if you feel like it, every individual finger as well, just to make sure that you're nice and loose. Even something as simple as rubbing your hands together can help to warm them up and get you ready to play. Just play around with all these movements, maybe make up some of your own, and try to build a little routine that works well for you. So most guitarists won't do a set routine before they play every time, but almost everybody will have a little bit of a shake off, will have a little bit of a loosen off, because it really does help. Now that we're nice and warmed up, let's get cracking on with the lesson. Hello and welcome to NL's online guitar lesson series. This is lesson number 3, and today we're going to look at chords, chord diagrams, and chord charts. So to start off talking about chords, what are chords exactly? Well, it's very simple. In music, a chord is when we play more than one note at once, and it really is that simple. Any time that we play more than one note at the same time, we create a chord. Now, if you start playing chords randomly, that is, if you just pick notes at random, you'll notice very quickly that some sound nice and some don't sound quite as nice. We call this consonance and dissonance. So some notes sound very harmonious together. There's not a lot of tension. They feel at ease with each other. This is an example of a consonant pair of notes. There's another. There's another. There's another. All of these relationships are consonant. If I play some more dissonant set of notes, there's a lot more tension within these relationships. And that is what creates the quality of the chords that we'll be playing. It's the relationships between these notes. Now, rather than trying to figure out all these combinations of notes for ourselves, we have a pre-selected set of chords that we can play on the guitar. Kind of the chords that come with the guitar. The chords that almost every guitarist learns first. We call these standard chords or standard chord shapes, because on guitar, whenever you make chords, you generally put your hands into a very specific and distinct shape. For example, this is a C major chord. And it'll always be a C major chord. So if I do it again, and even if I see a guitarist put his hands like this, but he doesn't strum, I know that he's about to play C major because of how his hands are. Likewise, this is an A minor chord, and it'll always be an A minor chord. And this is one of the standard sets of chords that almost every guitarist learns. There's a lot of chords like this, and it can be kind of tricky to memorize them all. It just takes time and practice, same as everything else. So let's look at some chord diagrams now. So in these written examples that we have on screen, these are some chord diagrams. Now we've already had a lesson on reading tab, and if you've not seen that lesson yet, you can go back and watch it. Just like tab, in chord diagrams, we use numbers to tell us where to play with our fingers. It's very similar to tab, except it doesn't run horizontally anymore. Instead, we have a picture of the fretboard vertically up and down like this. So whenever you look at a chord diagram, just imagine the fretboard straight up and down, and that should really help. Just like tab, we have the strings all in order, E, A, D, G, B, and E again. But we also have some symbols that we're not used to. Instead of writing 0 on the string, we actually have a picture, either of an open string or of a fretted string. You can see here in this first example of an E minor chord, there are 2 dots. These 2 dots are both on the 2nd fret, one on the 5th string and one on the 4th string. And that means that I'm going to press down the 2nd fret of the 5th string and the 2nd fret of the 4th string. Inside these dots, very helpfully, we also have numbers to tell us which fingers to use. You can see if I just have to press these 2 strings down, there's a lot of ways I can do it. I can do it like this, I can do it like this, I can do it like this, I can do it like that. However I want. All that matters is that the strings are pressed down. It won't change the sound depending on which fingers I use. But it will affect the ergonomics of how easy this is to play, and it will affect transitions into other chords later on, but we'll talk about that more later. So for now, this E minor chord is notated that I have my 2nd finger, that is my middle finger, because we start with our index, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have my 2nd finger on the 5th string, 2nd fret, and I have my 3rd finger, that is my ring finger, on the 4th string, 2nd fret. All the other strings in this example are notated as open. That's what that big circle above each of the strings is. So if I play this whole chord, that is an E minor. A couple of things to keep in mind when you're fretting chords like this is that it's really easy to screw it up. If I don't keep my fingers nice and curled and tight and tense, then they can kind of bend over and mute other strings. And it doesn't sound nearly as nice. Just like when we're fretting individual notes, we want to keep our fingers nice and curled over, and we want to press hard enough that we are making sure the strings can vibrate, but not too hard that we hurt our fingers or tire our hands out very quickly. In the beginning, it's very normal to get sore or crampy or just tired hands. You might also notice that your fingers and the skin on the tips of your fingers starts to hurt. It might even start to get dents in it from the strings. That's totally normal, and it just takes practice and getting used to. Eventually, your fingers won't hurt so much. Eventually, they'll be strong enough to press down these chords, no problem at all. But it just takes time. So with that in mind, let's have a look at this 2nd chord diagram. This is an A minor chord. If we look at the diagram, I have my 2nd finger, that is my middle finger, 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. I have my 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. And I have my 1st finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. The top string, this high E, that's open, and this low A is also open. The X above the low E string means that I don't play that string, or that it's muted. So when I play an A minor, when I strum it from here. I don't strum this bottom string. It doesn't sound bad in this case, but it's just general practice that you just start from that A when you play an A minor. So as you can see, there are lots of chord diagrams here, and there's a huge number of chords to play. You can start off very simply with these ones, because these are kind of selected for this level. These are beginner level chords, open chords. Like I said, they're the chords that kind of come with the guitar. They're absolute essentials to learn. Some of these sound awesome. Some of them are a little bit tricky, and a lot of them move your hands in ways that you won't be used to. So they all need getting used to. The main thing when you practice them is just to remember those points about technique. Make sure you're pressing hard enough to get the sound, but not so hard that you tire yourself out. Make sure that your fingers are nice and round. And don't be surprised if you get some dead strings or some buzzes. That just means that you need to work on fretting these chords. Just so that you can double check the sound of your chords, I'm going to play each of these chords in this written example once so that you can hear the sound. You can pause, you can rewind, and you can make sure that your chords sound like this. E minor. A minor. A minor 7. A major. E major. A major 7. A dominant 7th. D minor. F major 7. C major 7. G6. D major. F. C major. G major. D dominant 7th. Once you're comfortable with those basic chords and their shapes, and you can get a nice sound out of all of them consistently, the next thing to do is to practice playing them quickly. So the way I like to do it is to play a chord, in this case C major. Once I have my fingers in the right place, I can hear the sound. And that's how I double check that I'm playing everything properly. And then I'll try and kind of reset. So I'll take my hand off of the fretboard. And now this is the test, is how quickly can you get back to that chord shape. And that's a really good way to practice any shape. I still do it when I'm learning a new shape. So if I do A minor, then reset, and then A minor again, it's just like that. You just practice getting yourself into that new shape. Well, thanks very much for tuning into today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned an awful lot. Just as we finish our lesson today, we're going to round it off the same way as we started, with some stretches and some cool down movements. This is again just to make sure that we stay nice and loose now that we're finished, that we don't cramp up or get sore, and that means that we can play even better tomorrow. Okay, so a lot of the same movements we did at the start, we can do now. We can roll our shoulders, we can shake off our arms, we can roll our wrists, and we can stretch off our fingers. Just like at the beginning, the key thing is to keep things moving, to keep things warm and stretched off. With all that done, all that's left is to say thank you very much for joining us today at NL Guitar Lessons Online. Please Please check out some of our other content and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.